Hey, listeners. It's interesting having discussions with leaders, and the topic comes up about their productivity and the things that they're having to actually commit to doing. They feel overwhelmed at times. They feel like they have to be everything to everyone. Guess what? They don't. And they talk about how I have to do this and I have to do and this, and we should get on to do this other thing. And my question to them is, as you said, they really ask themselves this question, that they tend to be taking on a lot of stuff. But do they ever ask this question, which is, what do I need to stop doing? In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, real success often lies in knowing what to stop doing, freeing up space to focus on what really matters. An interesting topic, so let's discuss.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Welcome to the Ask Dennis episode. This is a freestyle episode where I'm asked a question by our listeners, or I share my thoughts, experiences, and insights from working with many leaders around the globe. Hey there, listeners. What an interesting topic. It comes up in my discussions with a lot of leaders. In our fast-paced world, we often find ourselves being hit with endless lineup of tasks, commitments, and goals. And we talk about doing this and that and constantly adding more to our plates to really help productivity, success, or even just simply trying to stay afloat. Now, while achieving or our ambition and a strong work ethic are really valuable things to put in place, the constant cycle or the constant pressure of doing can quickly become overwhelming. That feeling of you're always on. Now, in our drive or in our ambition to achieve more, we sometimes set ourselves up for failure by taking too much on. The question that's really asked is, what do I need to stop doing? Now, we tend to associate progress with doing more, but true growth and success often come from knowing when to step back, how you streamline things, and let go of things that no longer serve you. So learning to stop doing certain things can really free you up mentally and emotionally. In fact, it's going to give you some space to allow you to focus on more effective things that really do matter. Now, why stopping is just as important as starting things. As I said, we are constantly pushing ourselves to do more. We run that risk of burnout and losing sight of our original goals or intentions. In other words, if you think about that analogy of sticks and you've got plates on top, we talked about things like spinning many plates. And the more and more things that you take on, you run the risk of some of those plates dropping off, wobbling a lot, because you can't be everywhere. Now, it's really tempting to believe that success lies in the amount of volume or the things that you do, like more projects, more meetings, and more responsibilities. But often this leads to overwhelm, making us less productive and more prone to making mistakes or errors. And then that in turn can lead into disappointment or dissatisfaction. The reality is this: saying yes to everything often means saying no to something else. Usually your peace of mind, actually, quality time with loved ones, or even the strategic vision that you're trying to implement. So it can impact many things, right? And actually, for some of you who are going home, you may not be nice to live with, or you're going home so overwhelmed, you're still thinking about things even at the dinner table, with the family, with your partner. So the thing here is this: if you can stop certain activities, tasks, and create space more for you to be thoughtful or allow you to think, it's going to allow you to do more impactful work. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Dennis, so how do I identify what to stop doing? Well, the first thing I would say is to really assess your priorities. So take a hard look at what you're doing. Now, I think you need to be really honest with yourself as well. What tasks, habits, or commitments are truly aligned with that long-term goal? Are you spending time on activities that matter, or are you just trying to keep up with the expectations of others? Now, I think you might want to look at your to-do list. Now, there's a clue in that, which is the to-do word, right? In other words, you're never going to get to all of it. So I would always ask yourself what tasks that you're doing are really going to drive results, and which are just simply busyness or busy work, right? And so I think that's very important for you to do. In fact, I would actually convert it into a must-do today list and start thinking about that. Number two would be for you to recognize what's not working. So consider the areas of your life where you feel stuck, stressed, or spread too thin. There are repetitive tasks, or there might be some habits that actually consistently drain your energy and it don't add any value at all. So here's an example. In my business, tax wise, the GST, the goods and services tax, in some countries they call it the value added tax, the VAT. Now, I could do my return, but really it's not something that really lights my fire, to be honest. I just sometimes feel like dry reaching when I talk about it. Now, the thing here that's really funny is if I can get someone else to do it, that's great. Now, people love doing that kind of thing, so that's their passion. But you know what? It's not something that's actually for me. It drains my energy, but I can still do it. But it's not where I should be spending my time. Now, these could be other things, activities that you might need to stop doing. Now, that can be very easy for you to overlook it because it's quite familiar, or it's a habit, or it's a behavior that once did serve you, but now is becoming obsolete over time. Still have to do my GST return. There's a requirement there for it to be done, but I don't need to do it. I find the right people to do it. The third thing would be to identify time wasting habits. We all have like routines and habits that really do consume our time. And they actually might do it what I call quietly, or they might just be there. It's passive. In other words, you don't always actually know that you're doing it. And it's a bit like having apps on your phone, or you're paying for a streaming service that at the time was a really good idea, but now you're not even using it, but you're still paying for it. And how many of you are doing that? So things like that, you might want to look at doing as well. Here's another one, that you are spending a lot of your time checking emails, or you're going to unnecessary meetings, or you're engaging in some unproductive social media scrolling. Now, all of these are really habits, but they are all behaviors, but there are some things that you might need to start becoming a little bit more aware that you're doing it. Now, instead of filling your gap in your schedule, could you take some time out to intentionally or be more deliberate and pausing to refocus? So another way of doing that is actually taking some regular breaks. So in between meetings, maybe taking a 5-minute, 10-minute break, or you might be doing a certain task, do it for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, take a 10-minute break. Because if you can do this, it's actually going to help you. So you don't actually have to fill every single gap in your schedule. Now, if there is a gap, then put a break in there. All right. So that'll actually help you do it. Number 4 would be ask yourself some tough questions. Now, to get a clearer sense of what you need to stop doing, you could ask these questions, and just a few of them I'm thinking of. One would be, which of my current commitments do I dread doing, or I don't have any energy to do it? Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be done, and doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, but maybe what are they? What are the activities that no longer excite me or challenge me? What responsibilities that I have taken on that don't align with my personal or professional goals? Am I doing things out of a habit or an obligation rather than my passion or my purpose? That's a strong question. And what am I doing right now? Is it taking me closer to my goals? And if the answer is no, stop doing it. Number 5 could be whereby you either delegate or you eliminate the item. Because you see, once you've identified the task that's no longer serving you, then you can determine whether you can delegate it or eliminate it altogether. Not everything has to be done by you, right? That's the key. So sometimes the most productive decisions that you can make is to delegate it to someone else, trust someone else with that task. And here it is, simply let go. You know what? When you actually delegate or if you eliminate something and you're letting go of it, whether delegating it or eliminating it, it's actually a freeing feeling. You feel a lot more freer. In fact, you're probably going to find some time in your calendar because you see, the power of letting go is actually really quite interesting because you see, stopping can actually feel counterintuitive, if I can put it that way. We can worry that by letting go of something, we'll miss out. So there's the old FOMO, the fear of missing out, or you might fall behind. However, letting go creates the mental and emotional space, as I said earlier on, necessary for you to focus on higher value activities. So when you stop trying to do everything, you gain that clarity and you can put your energy into areas that are going to bring some really big returns for you. Now, if you can consider the example of a high-performing leader who adds responsibility after responsibility to their schedule, they're constantly taking on new initiatives without evaluating what they might need to stop. So I'm going to really encourage you to think about it. Because you see, what actually happens there, if they do this, is that eventually their performance will start to plateau. Not because they're not working hard, but because they're stretched too thin. So the secret to unlocking your next level of success is not adding more, but rather stopping the things that no longer serve you so that you can focus on those things that really matter. If you can make stopping a habit, the practice of that isn't going to be a one-time event. It's going to be an ongoing process. So you think about how you can do this on an ongoing basis. And one thing I actually say to leaders is your ability to say no sometimes is going to be your friend. But it's not what you say, it's how you say it that's going to be really important. Because if you can build yourself some regular reflections, and if I talk about the reflections that I've talked about in other episodes as well, but if you can build that reflection time into your schedule, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, even daily, and then you can evaluate your commitments, your habits, and are they still aligned with the values and the goals? Because when you're flying from A to B on a flight, they are constantly checking to see where they are going because things change. And so they may not always be on the same course. They might need to get around some turbulence. The winds have changed and so forth. So they might need to think about it, right? So then what you might need to do is keep evaluating things to make sure that your commitments, your habits, and all that are still aligned around your values and around your goals. Here is something for you to think about. Here's a statement I'm going to make. Choose less to achieve more. An interesting statement, eh? In a world that sets an expectation of busyness, right, where there's always things on, choosing to stop doing certain things is really, it's quite radical. It's quite different. But you know what? It takes courage to acknowledge that doing more isn't always better. So by deliberately identifying what to stop doing, you're going to set yourself apart, or you're going to set yourself up for sustainable success, but also apart from other leaders. It's going to give you some improved well-being, but it's also going to give you a greater fulfillment. So what I'm going to suggest you do is you take some moment this weekend or today. What will you stop doing today? What can you let go of to make room for the best work and your most meaningful contributions? Because you see, in the end, the art of stopping is what allows you to effectively move forward. Well, listeners, my call to action this week is to download the 10 proven ways to lead and thrive in today's world. I've packaged what leaders that I have actually interviewed around the world into an executive guide featuring 10 key themes and 42 strategic insights from worldwide leaders. These are leaders that I've interviewed on the podcast. There are leaders who have actually shared their wisdom and their insights. Now, the link for this guide is in the show notes. So whether you're listening on whatever app you're listening to this to, in the show notes will be the actual link to the 10 proven ways to lead and thrive in today's world. Hey listeners, that's it for this episode. It's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining me on the Leadership is Changing podcast. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.